Every interaction I have with anyone who is suffering from pain and other symptoms is in some way the same. Everyone wants answers, doesn't know where to find them, who to believe, what to think, or even despairs that there are answers. My column system explains every corner of mind-body experience so that you know how to think and what to do to get better fast. The 3 columns, emotions, doubt, and power, are each tools to eradicate chronic symptoms, alleviate acute ones, and expand peace and alignment with yourself. My group membership allows you to interact directly with me to help you think through how to handle each mind-body moment in a supportive, mind-body educated community. You can sign up for these at www.crushingdoubt.org. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. Today I am joined by Charles Sanchez, a professional comedian, writer, and actor, and an addict in recovery, father, educator, and friend. I'm looking forward to discussing the insights he has gained in his 30 years of sobriety. Charles, I'm so excited to have you here with me. I had such a great time talking to you on Brothers in Arms, and as I told you, I just felt like I needed some time, just me and you, talking about all the things that we did. You said so many really fascinating things. So welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's an honor. It was a pleasure doing the Brothers in Arms, man. That was real therapeutic at times for me. I got to speak on things that were truth to me.
Well, that's great.
Appreciate it.
Now I know that you're a comedian, and comedians use everything, including car alarms going on in the background, which we can hear. So we're gonna bring it right in. Listen, Edgar and Eric actually know I'm at least half a comedian. I'm more than that. I've had trouble as a therapist sitting still because I'm like, there's so many jokes to be made here. So it's a pleasure to be talking to somebody who gets both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
So Charles, go ahead. No, you.
My apologies. No, I was just saying there's so many things in the world not to laugh at, because our life's too serious sometimes, man. And I'm guilty of that myself, where I've been, in that state of mind where life is everything serious. But
actually, that's a great point, because, I think that even us comedians, I'm going to lump myself in if you're willing to have me. We know that we tend to be entertaining for other people. But when we're on our own, it can be a totally different story. We can get very, very serious. And actually, that's the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, you and I think, agree, we've already agreed on this on the previous show, but that comedic side often does at least have some anchor in some of the sadness and traumas of life.
Yes.
And
yes.
I wonder if you could talk about how you got into your career in comedy and how you understand that.
I was a funny kid, like thousands of comedians. Grew up in poverty at the time. The government cheese and all that stuff. Quickly, my dad educated himself, went back to college. My mom went back to college. My mother was a high school dropout. So it changed the trajectory, I think. That's what I say, by their education and the jobs they got. So me being the baby of the family, out of 5 siblings, humor was the medicine of the day. My father has that dry humor. My mother is hilarious, very funny woman who can do voices, and that's where my comedy kind of started. So elementary, junior high school, doing little plays, where I would play the tooth and just quiet.
You were a funny tooth.
Yeah, I was a funny tooth. And I too could not stand still at times and had to, do the jazz hands for the tooth, and they would go cut. But it started off as a little boy, and like I said, like thousands of comedians that wanted to make their mom laugh because of the sadness or everything that poverty brings.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm very blessed that my parents have been together for almost 65 years, I believe. They've been married. So they're very youthful looking. They're very sharp and intelligent. And I think that's a testament to the humor that was brought to our home back in the day. So it all started at home. Yeah. And then a teacher in high school that told me in an acting class, Charles, you're a good actor, but you'd be a great comedian. And that kind of that and watching Richard Pryor on television was the spark. So it led from there.
I love the way that you highlight this, though, because you know, a lot of what I do on this show is to capture the true vulnerability of people, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show when I met you the other day. Is you're so good at just being vulnerable and opening it up. And what you said that struck me is that part of the reason that you are a comedian is that you wanted to make your mom laugh. You wanted to bring joy to her when you saw her suffering. And I love that you can be that direct and aware at the same time. So now I'm going to actually just shift gears for a sec to another major side of you.
All right.
Which is that you are a recovered addict.
Yes.
As you describe yourself. And I know you said your clean date was May 5th, 1993. That was Cinco de Mayo, huh?
Yeah, man.
Wow.
And I get laughs just from that in the recovery community when I tell people.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Cinco de Mayo, man. It was just a fluke. I didn't plan it. Like, this is going to be hilarious someday.
You're even funny in the way that you recovered from alcoholism.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, that in itself has a hilarious story, man. You know, I'm part Native American of the Chumash tribe here in California. And I went to an all Native American recovery home, a rehab. Mm-hmm. And they concentrated on alcoholics, and me identifying as an addict. They said, we'll learn from you. So all the books, everything was AA. Everything was AA based. And so they had no idea of how to deal with me. Even the counselors. I think one of them said, yeah, we read a chapter on drug addiction, but like our specialty is alcoholism.
Wow. So what was your drug of choice, or the one that you struggled with the most back then?
Oh, wow. Good question. I used to say in the old days, they would say, what was your drug of choice? I said, well, what do you got?
But I got it. All right.
That I preferred was methamphetamines. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Dan, I was a good kid, man. I had no issues, great family. And that was, it was a time of my life where I was lonely, believe it or not. I had a kid in high school. I married the woman, and then shortly after divorced the woman that I went to high school with, had the child with. And I was lonely. And I had heard that a group of friends down the street, were, you know, in the garage drinking beer. But what I didn't know is that they had escalated their beer drinking to drugs.
Wow.
You know, yeah. Marijuana in my mind at that time, I was like, I can handle it. I was a clean kid, man. After high school is when everything happened. It was really, I think, the trauma of the separation and divorce that led me to path.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I felt this way when I met you the first time, but every time you talk, I feel like there's a nugget of something really interesting in everything that you say. And one of the things that you said there that I wanted to pick up on is you said, I was lonely, believe it or not. And the reason I wanted to pick up on that is because I think that's how everybody who's lonely feels.
Yeah.
That they can't imagine anybody would recognize them, that they would see that they're lonely. And I often highlight in this show and in the work that I do how we are all at some level alone. I know I talked to you about this on the show. There's something I talk about called the power of aloneness, and that's in recognizing only you're on your journey. It can be quite lonely.
Yeah. Especially as a comedian. As a comedian, there's a lot of times that you're lonely. If you're a traveling comedian, a working comedian, you're going from place to place, town to town, state to state, and sometimes out of the United States, and travel abroad. And it's just you and your thoughts and your comedy and how the show went before and how you anticipate the show going in the future. And that is a lot of downtime. One, for someone that is seeking the attention. Forgive me to all the comics that don't believe in that theory, but
that won't admit it.
that's right, or that won't admit it. I believe that my mom was my first audience, and then my brothers and sisters and father, of course. But we're always constantly seeking something, Dr. Dan. So it's a very lonely business if you're not put together right, which a lot of us aren't. I've met a lot of damaged comedians, from my own observation, my own recovery of being an addict and different things of depression and things like that I can safely say that I see them in me and me in them.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it is a very lonely experience. You're the only one on stage. You're the only one doing it. It's all coming from your mind. And I was actually thinking, the funniest humor to me is when people relate their personal life on stage.
Yeah.
Is that, I assume that's something you do just based on what I know about you, but I'd be interested to hear what's your comedy actually like in that way? What makes you laugh?
Because of Mom, and I saw the impact of her characters just around family and friends. Mom was not a comedian that a woman that wanted to be a comedian. She just was funny, straight out.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a chameleon. The African-American neighbors called down the street and her voice would change. The Mexican-American family across the way their voice would change on the phone. And so that was always fascinating to me. So as a kid, growing up and in high school and elementary and junior high and in high school and college, the voices came. So I do a lot of that on stage. Now, quickly, I do a joke where I talk about I had a girlfriend who was a tweaker, an amphetamine addict, and she would vacuum at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the punchline is she would vacuum with a broom. I did it for years as myself because that was my true story. Mm-hmm. Being up and on, and would vacuum and stuff early in the morning. And, I did that as me and it wouldn't get any laughs. But when I switched it and said it was a girlfriend, yeah. Everybody loved it.
Now that's funny.
Right.
That's really interesting.
So
it's almost like it hit too close to the mark when it was you, but when you removed it a little bit, that's hilarious.
How strange is that? All of us comics know the formula of the reality of comedy. The reality, the more real, the better. And that it like changed for me. I grinded it out, and then I did this, but once I switched it to a fictitious girlfriend who was on.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
I was thinking about it. It's like I do agree. The more real it is, the better. But it's almost like the more real and unreal at the same time, where you hear it and you're like, I can't believe that would have happened to anybody. But you also know instinctively in your heart, yes, that's the kind of thing that happens. That's what makes people laugh.
Yeah.
It's the unexpected thing that they always knew was there.
Yeah, I think that's why that material resonates in the recovery community when I do shows for them, mm-hmm. us, and because that realism there, I think a lot of them go, with a wink, we know that's you,
Yeah.
but it still plays out even in those audiences.
So when did it first occur to you that you might have a problem in a way that you knew you needed to do something about?
Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry, but that's okay if I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey man, I was here's the full story, or the condensed version, the Cliff Notes version.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a run for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, living out of my car. I was homeless. I got together with a group of guys that were doing no good. They were, honestly, they were transporting and delivering, and I was the driver. Now listen to this. I was living out of a brand new painted 1964 Bel Air station wagon. And I'm talking, it was pristine, man. It was all original. It was beautiful. Wow. And I had purchased it before I went into rehab. I remember doing all that. And then towards the end, I was in a motel and they were talking about killing me because I knew too much. And it really woke me up. I escaped, ran down the middle of the street in Long Beach, screaming top of my lungs for help. Not one person stopped. Not one person came out of their house or apartment. And I ran and I made it to a friend who got recovery through Jesus, right? Who had gone to church and stopped using. There was a home his mother was selling, so it was abandoned. And I went to the door, knocked on the door, just on a whim. And he was home. He said, "Come on, let's go. I'll go with you. We'll go get your car." He let me out the door and he took off. So because I had escaped from that place, now I had to go get my car, got my car, drove it, and I went to the first place I thought of, and that was my sister's house. And at the time, and I want to say this with respect, she was a prosecuting attorney for drug cases. And I went to her home. She was at work. My other sister was there, called her, said, "This guy," she hated me. And said, "Hey, why is he here?" Da, da, da. She got on the phone and said, "You're welcome to stay there as long as you get into recovery." And I said, "I'm ready." And then that's how it all began. And that was like in April of 93.
That's
but the day that I actually went in was 5/5/93.
Right. Well, it's an unbelievable story, and it captures how harrowing a life can be. I mean, I'm sure you never imagined being in a situation like that, and then there you were.
Yeah.
Which is just a staggering thing, and the kind of thing that I think really does wake people up. So then, was it hard for you at the beginning in recovery, or did you feel that you had? Yeah, I mean, I think it usually is. So what were the hard parts for you?
The withdrawal. People always talk about heroin and alcohol withdrawal. Amphetamines, meth was very difficult in the beginning because I remember the first week or so just wanting to jump over the fence and leave. Mm-hmm. I often tell the story when I share at conventions. I was in the middle of Compton, California. That's where my rehab was. On the right of me were the prostitutes at night. On the left were the apartments, what they used to call the crack apartments, because that's where you could buy crack and drugs and everything. Across the street was a 24-hour liquor store. But in California, they stopped selling alcohol at 2. So anything that you wanted to relapse on was there, man. You could go any
relapse
direction.
Central.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember going in with about maybe 25 guys. And to this day, the story I heard from an old counselor was that I'm the only one left that is still clean.
Wow. I taught in Compton for 2 years when I was in my early 20s. I did Teach for America, and so I know the area well, and when you describe things like that, it's actually not as unfamiliar to me as you might think.
Yeah, Long Beach Boulevard and Greenleaf in that area.
Mm-hmm.
It's torn down now. They've literally flattened the land. So when I hear people in recovery talk their stories about their rehab, and I went over there last week for a meeting. I have nothing like that, man. It breaks my heart. But the Native American recovery program for Native Americans were wiped out. The funding was wiped out. I mean, that was like one of the first things that they decided to do. So much pain and suffering in the Native community that needed it so bad. Now it's different. There's outside funding and things like that. And the casinos, people don't know this. In California, the casinos literally donate millions and millions of dollars to recovery.
Wow. Well, that's good to hear. It made me want to ask, do you think we've made any progress as a society in this regard? The far-reaching nature of AA and NA and all of these organizations, do you think we're making progress, or is it just changing, or is it the same?
Because it is an anonymous program, millions and millions of people have been saved.
Yeah.
But it's not publicized.
Right.
I've heard the stories of medical people that have said, there's no actual data that helps in some way. It's worded differently, but
right.
But millions have been helped. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Right.
Seen it with my own.
I actually think most people in their lives have seen it with their own eyes. So one of my very, very closest friends, one of my very best friends, he's in AA, and we were friends before he was in AA and after.
Oh.
And it's really interesting to see because the main changes that I've seen are the way he interacts with himself.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And he's much more able to interact with me as fully himself. Not that he wasn't before. But
I understand what you mean by that.
I know you know what I mean. Yeah. So I actually wanted to ask you, what do you think AA and the 12-step programs get that maybe therapy in general doesn't as much? What does it give to people? Because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've gone to the meetings with him, and I'm like, this is amazing. It's incredible.
Dan, if nobody's told you, man, thank you. We need a friend in recovery because so many people abandon us. And so to have a long-lasting friend like that is a testament to your friendship, man, with him, because you need that. I always jokingly say I have no friends outside of recovery. Because
actually, it's interesting. I think the bulk of his close friends either are in AA or at least understand it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Dr. Dan, that I wanted to say. It's the first thing that came to my mind was camaraderie, the fellowship, right? The fellowship is what helps us. There's always what they say is one addict helping another, one alcoholic helping another, because there is no recovery. I truly believe without the fellowship of other addicts, alcoholics suffering, because it takes one to know one, like they say. That's why comics, there's brief camaraderie. When you're in the club or you're on a tour together, you're working together, man. You're in the green room and you're cutting it up. There's something about that group, Dr. Dan, that makes it easier. And because I know that was me for a long time. That's what made it easier. And I really, truly have an amazing family that has been there for me through thick and thin. The doubtful times, the times that I said, well, I don't want to be here no more. I'll go out.
It's so important because, when you're not believing in yourself and then the outside world doesn't seem to believe in you either, it becomes very hard. I actually remember this one moment with this best friend of mine. He was always very steady with me. I think other people didn't see him as steady. The behaviors that would come out of his alcoholism and drug use, he didn't bring them around to me so much. But there was one night where we were supposed to have dinner, and he didn't show up, which was very unlike him with me. But I knew he was struggling with some things. I didn't know what he was struggling with, but I'm interested in your take on what happened, because I texted him and I said, hey, I just want to check in with you because I was worried about you because, normally you show up for these things. And I just want you to know, whatever's going on with you, I need you here with me.
Wow.
And he told me that made a big difference. And I
sure did.
Yeah, I can see why, but I wanted to get your take.
Okay. Just from the story, from myself, that's what I want. I want the addict's perspective of what would that mean. From an addict's perspective, which includes alcoholism also.
Yeah.
He loves you, and he wanted to put on a good image for you with him not drinking as much. Like you say, I never really saw him. That behavior really didn't come around me. So I'm assuming maybe he did that purposely. Because in the old days, I mean, I had a buddy or two that would, do a one line or smoke, and they'd put it down and walk away and party and have fun. And then so around them, I had to be the addict with etiquette. So it'd be like, oh, no more for me, please, thank you, I'm fine. And so it was always that there were certain people in my life that I knew loved me, cared about me, that I put on a different hat. So I think that's what happened that night. I think it may have possibly gotten overboard for him, the drinking, and he was so intoxicated, he didn't want you to see him like that. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that's what happened. But
he pretty much explained that. I think there were two things, though, that I think that I did there. I certainly feel good about it myself, but especially in relation to him. But I think this is something that maybe we can say to the community at large about what you can give to people. Because he tells me what helped is, I was non-judgmental.
Yes.
This was not about judgment. I went straight to caring about him. But then, too, I think I went the extra mile of saying, and this is what we talked about on Brothers in Arms, the importance of saying the real feelings. I mean, I even felt this about you on that show. I was like, I'm just meeting you, and yet I want to talk to you a lot. It just felt that way. So I was like, why not say it? Because it gives you value. It tells you I value you.
Thank you. Yes. It
does.
So
I think when he got that message, it was validating in a way that he would have needed more than most people.
Dr. Dan, when we are in that state of mind, in that world, I call it, because I often say at meetings, I did not belong in that world. And when we're in that place, there's a lot of self-hatred, man. Whatever we are drowning out with the alcohol or drugs, the pain, the suffering inside us, it is a very, very, very dark place. And to accept any kind of light, I love you, I care about you, I'm calling you because I care about you. You have to somewhere in that big bubble of addiction, have to have a little hole or something that accepts that light. So his trust and love in you, I believe, truly, truly was why he let that in. And it eventually helped him. Look at him now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure he got it from other sources as well, but I'm just glad he had it. He's in great shape. I'm actually going to his wedding this weekend. He's getting remarried.
Right on.
I'll be speaking at his wedding. It's really exciting. What did you say? You wanted me to tell him something?
Please tell him I said congratulations, brother, because those type of celebrations, man, are very far in between for addicts. Because look, I'm very lucky. I found a wife that accepted and accepts me for who I am today, a recovering addict. Fortunately, I was already in recovery when we got married, but she knew me 30 years ago when we worked together and stayed, here's the key, stayed friends with me during all of my runs and addiction and out there on the streets. And she always was a friend. And I fell in love with her later on.
It's great to have people who stick by you and that you know. I mean, the thing is, if they're non-judgmental of you before and after, they know that you're going to be non-judgmental of them forever,
Yeah.
Didn't matter. It didn't matter to me before or after.
Yeah. And that's the beauty, man, of you, because you did stick by him. You knew something was going on. You knew something was happening in his world. And man, I'm telling you, that lifeline, it helps so much. So if there's any of your viewers out there that have family or friends that are struggling with addiction, any types, food, sex addiction, porn addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction, just remember, that's not them. That's not them, man. There's sorry about that.
No, this is good.
I'm feeling grateful for all the people that have helped me in my recovery. And I'm grateful. I'm very grateful right now. It's not them. That good person, that person that you love, that person you grew up with, that person you played ball with, they're still in there. That addiction is just taking them over, man.
Yeah.
And with by the grace of God, they are in recovery. They remove that shell, that skin that they're in. It's beautiful to see, man. But you got to have people that love and believe in you during those times.
Yeah. Well, I want to, I'm going to run over with you here because I want to talk about a bunch of other things still, if you have time.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you need to go, let me know. But there's a couple things that I still want to. I'm savoring this because you're a person who is so open and fully there for the present, and I think it's very healing for people to hear from you. So I wanted to talk about the other side of the coin of that openness that can happen to you, because you said this incredibly interesting thing on the show the other day, Brothers in Arms, and it was this concept of guilt radar. That term just like blew me away. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience with guilt radar and explain what that is and what it's been like.
Yeah. I coined the phrase many, many years ago. I've been doing stand-up comedy for about 25 years, consistently. And I would have people, not just in comedy, but in the world, life, and friends and people in recovery, people in comedy. And I started noticing that when comics, for example, would have this, you would help each other out, or you would help a comic out, and then they would say, yeah, I'm going to book you, man, and I got this show for you, or whatever, and it never comes around. And then you would see them at clubs, and then they would do the like, they don't know you, and then it's sad because you've lost a friend over some stupid, book me stuff, but also in recovery, I've met a lot of people in the world where in the old days I would go up and say, hey, I see you. And I know you have issues with addiction, and I want to help. And that was early in my recovery, probably the first 10 years. I wanted to tell everybody, I wanted to shout it from the world. There's a better way. Your life could change today. Come see me. Ask me how. Little button, But I would do that with comedians. And they would come forward and tell me everything under the sun that they've done and what they're doing and their remorse and why they need to stop. And then I would never hear from them again. So in the comedy clubs, same thing, same situation. Hey, Joe, fictitious person. Hey, Joe, what's going on, man? Hey, Charles, what's going on? And then I would lose a friend. So, 15 years ago, or rather, God, almost 20 years ago, I stopped doing that. And now a lot of them, well, I shouldn't say that. A few come to me on the side, but it's the same situation where they talk and they release it all. I've done this, I feel bad about that, and this is why I do that drug or this drink and whatever. And I listen now, and I don't judge, and I offer, hey, if you need help or get the direction of getting into recovery, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I still don't hear. I still don't hear from them. It's still guilt radar.
Yeah. But well, the thing that struck me about it is that you were essentially pointing out. Well, actually, I maybe this is what I laid on top of what you were saying about it, but I understood guilt radar as at least partially relating to the fact that people who know they have an issue and see somebody who's gotten out of their issues or could help them out, they're almost afraid of you.
Yes.
They're like, I got to stay away from this guy. He's dangerous. He could help me.
Yeah.
And that's how I understood it.
Yeah. And that's correct. That's correct. And I think I did mention that. I was now going off of my memory of what I remember, how it kind of came about, the phrase guilt radar. But yes, you know, you could say anything about your career. Oh, wow, it was the audience. You know, not your material, but it was the audience that didn't laugh. You know, hey, that's not my fault, whatever.
All right.
And so I always say that it kind of stifled my career a little. I always believe that as I'm getting older, I'm not believing it as much. But I famous comics that are out there now making millions of dollars knew the life that I lived back then, where I didn't drink and I didn't smoke and I didn't do drugs, you know, anymore. And they did not want that around.
Yeah.
So I had I had a famous comic tell me, oh, you're one of those guys, and walked away from me during a 2-hour conversation because he did not want that in his arena.
You know, I think this is one of the reasons I actually felt so at home when I went to an AA meeting, and I've never had problems with addiction. But
Thank God.
Thank God. But in a way, I think I've lived a very similar life, especially in this way, because I had a lot of trauma in my growing up. We didn't really talk about this the other day, so you wouldn't know this. But when I was born, my father was dying of cancer. So I came into a very traumatic situation. My mom was depressed. My older brother was a mess from this. I mean, sometimes I think about him as a 3-year-old experiencing the loss. I didn't have to experience the loss directly. So I came into life with 2 very traumatized people. I grew up in trauma. And when you talk about guilt radar, listen, I'll tell you, like in middle school or high school, if I ever talked real, most people would run screaming.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to know. My life was too painful for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way in which that's something that I so appreciate about, I mean, I can speak for AA especially, but there's an acknowledgement there that life is hard. It's a group of people that doesn't deny things. I mean, I know addicts do deny things, at least at first, but the whole goal is stop denying. Let's face what really is. When I got into that room, I was like, these are my people. I've never been addicted to anything, and yet I fit here.
I've met people that have gone through Al-Anon, right? Adult children with parents who are addicted to alcohol, or Nar-Anon, and who have felt right at home. Mm-hmm. You know, luckily, I'm sensing that wasn't really part of your life as far as there was no real addictions in my life that way. We had other issues, but not that. Good. But I have met people from the outside of it. I know a woman today, right? Because it's anonymous, she'll remain anonymous, who goes to meetings, and she has no real true addictions. And she hangs out at the club where I volunteer, and my home club, and she loves it. She loves it. She's not a phony. She's not like writing a book, you know, or researching for a movie. You know, that is the real her, and but no real addictions.
That's right. Well, that's the thing. I think that, and this is something that I think the 12-step programs, as I understand them, could teach a lot to therapists and to the therapy community in general. Because, first of all, one of the things that they do is there's no hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like in therapy, in general, and I don't do this as a therapist. One of the first things I do is bring down the hierarchy. I'm like, no. This is not me, the wise one, and you, the one who doesn't know anything. You're the one who knows everything about you. You know tons of things about life. I can shed some light on some things, but mostly I'm going to be here with you. And I feel like that's what I get in the 12-step programs that I do not get when I go to see a therapist, generally speaking.
A lot of us have been there, Dr. Dan.
Yeah.
When that alcoholic comes in the rooms, we know what he's been through without him saying it. We know exactly what he or she have been through.
Yeah.
We know that look. We know that hesitation when they speak. We know the withdrawal symptoms. So yeah, there's this takes one to know one, man.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder what you pick up on with me, because the way I think of me in this situation is I'm kind of like an addict who never got addicted, never had any of that, but I've got everything else.
That's great. Well, obviously your friendship and your teachings have led you down the right path, man. And we need empathetic, sympathetic people in our lives. People that have been there or seen it happen or seen them happen around them or with friends or whatever. It's always good to have a normie, as they call it, in recovery, right? Somebody that could drink a drink and then go, well, not going to drink anymore, and we're all going, what? He just put the drink down? He's not going to drink it? Drink the rest. It's good to have those people in our lives, man. And I look, I truly believe this. I have met so many people that were not addict alcoholics that have behaviors like that. But I've also met addict people that don't have addictions that are, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's otherworldly, that they have this sympathy for us, man. And it's almost like, who knows, Dr. Dan, if you believe in the afterlife or in, reincarnation, many lives, which I do. I truly believe that.
Maybe I was one in a former life.
Yeah, I believe that's who you were.
Well, it's interesting.
From that past life has given you the sympathy, empathy of people that are suffering today. And maybe that's what directed you to the studies that you did, man, and what you're doing now. I'm a firm believer of that.
Well, the other thing, and we'll finish up on this, but the other thing that I was thinking is, and this is what I felt when I met you, this is really why I wanted to have you on the show. I have always been a person who has run towards people. I want connection. And I felt that from you. I'm sure that may not have been true earlier in your life before you got clean, but it is definitely true of you now. And that's the part of that community, the AA community, that I certainly know, where people are running towards each other. They're saying, we have limited time on earth, let's connect.
That's right.
Whereas a lot of other people aren't dealing with the problems and they're running away from people, which is why Guilt Radar was so fascinating to me. It's because it described exactly that. So when I saw you, I was like, run towards him.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. I don't know, man. This life is short, brother.
Mm-hmm.
I've had recently, two addicts in my life. One took his own life. The other one died of just the ravages of alcoholism. And one I helped get into recovery, into a rehab, and who recently just got out. It's been a rough month, man. Rough month. And I think those are the warriors, man. The people like yourself that run to the people that are suffering. Because we feel as addicts in recovery, man, that we are the scum of the earth at times. That nobody wants to be around us. Nobody wants to be with us. And we're shocked when someone wants to talk to us or wants to conversate with us, because it's man, it's something out of left field all the time. When you're in that state of mind, when you're in deep into your addiction and not in recovery. So I commend and love people like that, man, because we need it. That's what we need in someone that's suffering. They need people like you, someone that will love them for who they are, right? Dan, there's a phrase I use real quick, Dr. Dan. It's called I call it, it's an old phrase that I believe is in the big book, the 12-step AA. And it goes, there and before the grace of God go I. And I use that phrase all the time because I've been in the car with addicts going to a show or going to a convention. And then they go, look at that crackhead on the street. That is me, man. That is them. Because we are one drug away, one from being there again. So I always remind them, there and before the grace of God go I, man. Can't forget that. And a lot of us do, because life is good. Hey, I've got 10 years and 5 years and 6 years and 20 years and 30 years. And you do. And a lot of addicts will deny this and say, no, that's not true. But you forget sometimes who you were. And it's always important. That's why meetings are important, man.
You know, it's interesting. I'll finish up on this one thing, but I do mind body work. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
Me too.
And I would never say, oh, you're one of those, and then I'll disappear. So maybe we'll have you back to continue this discussion. I would love that. But, you know, I treat people for mind-body conditions where whatever's going on in their minds emotionally or in their thought process can lead to symptoms. And that also is a there before the grace of God go I kind of thing, because the people who aren't suffering, they don't know. They take it for granted, and suddenly their life can change. So I see a connection between addiction and these symptoms of life and how people's lives can change just radically. And that is why I feel it is so important that we all have to run towards each other. We got to help each other. And I'm honored that you were here with me. I love talking with you. I want to do it more. So if you're open to coming back, I would love to have you back.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right.
Open. This is great, man. It's always good to talk about it because you never know, Dr. Dan. You never know, man, that one person that's watching, that this could help.
That's right. Well, Charles, I want to thank you for coming on, and I look forward to talking further with you about it. I think you've done a wonderful job in your life. It's an honor to know you. I'm excited to continue that.
It's an honor to know you too, man. I would one day love to see Greg's face.
Someday, a lot of people say that about Greg. Someday,
the man behind the curtain.
We'll all get together, and even Greg will show his face. Thank you so much, Charles.
Nice, Jim.
I say it's a pleasure virtually every time I have somebody on here, and it's true. But there are times where I feel in my element in a different sort of way. And talking to Charles is like that, and I expressed it even in the interview. He's just my kind. He's my people. My people are the ones who run towards each other, as I said. And that's what I was drawn to in meeting Charles. But he also has so much wisdom, as so many people who have suffered do. And he's suffered in all kinds of ways, and in ways where he can be so totally honest about where he is in the moment. And it just made me think, I need to bring this to my audience. It's a conversation about what goes on with addiction, what goes on in the inside of people's minds. It fits with that idea of the power of aloneness and how we're on our own journey. You could hear all of it, all the things we talk about in the column system. You could hear about it in Charles. And that's one of the things that I'm finding more and more is that the columns don't just relate to mind-body symptoms. They relate to overall psychology. And it was a pleasure having Charles on the show. I hope to bring him back soon. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.